Hi, my name is Sanna Clark. I'm a mental health counselor in New Orleans, Louisiana. This is for Pagan Pride, which is a event that I'm super excited about, always love attending, and really believe in and am proud in. So today I'm going to be giving a little lecture on witchcraft as self-care, how our pagan beliefs can play into our mental health, and kind of the psychology behind that. So I do have a master's in counseling. I've been practicing clinical mental health counseling for 3 years now, 3.5 years. And I've given this lecture a couple times before. This is a subject that I am really passionate about, both in my practice and personally. And by my practice, I mean as a clinician and as a pagan. And I use it for my own mental health as well. I've never given this presentation not live, recorded. So I have my friend Gabby behind you, and she is doing her makeup, and I'm sort of giving it to her. So that's the context of what's happening now. So yeah, let's get started. I have my notes. Yeah, so as I said, I am a witch and I am a licensed counselor. And it was always my dream to incorporate both of them into a practice, and that's kind of what I've been able to do. So why is self-care important? Well, especially as a pagan, so many of us are affected by energies. And by the way, this doesn't just apply to pagans, this applies to people of, I mean, in general, any religion, people that are, I guess, more spiritually attuned. I think that we find ourselves more affected by energy in general. And by energy, that is a really vague term. So don't, the definition of that can be really open-ended. I have my notes. Here's what I'm looking at. So yeah, basically affected by, to maintain our energy. And that can be from other people, in our environment, internally, our creativity. Sorry. You're okay. So yeah, to recharge ourselves if we're depleted. Have you ever heard of empaths? So we hear that term all the time, and kind of what we look at, it's kind of a good example to link mental health with spirituality, because we think about empaths as being people that are kind of hyper attuned to other people's energy, and what that would look like from a psychospiritual point of view is how can we use spirituality to not only explain that but to treat it. So basically we see that as being overly sensitive to energy, right? Like people's negativity, people's excitement, people's anger, people's depression, people's joy, maybe, whatever it is, it's affecting us in a way that's challenging. So how can we go about using sort of spiritual practice to help this? Well, we can, do a lot of cleansing rituals, make that part of our self-care routine. We can wear protection amulets when we're around certain people or just in general to help us sort of maintain our spiritual and energetic boundaries. We can use, visualization to imagine boundaries around us. We can do that through meditation or just through simple visualization exercises. So that's kind of a good example of how that overlaps. Yeah, so my more on kind of the overlap is, so with anxiety and depression, we look at regulating energy and regulating emotion. So if we're struggling to regulate, and by that I mean sort of cope with and process and resolve our emotion and or energy, that can lead to anxiety or depression. All that depression essentially is our system shutting down from too much stress, right? It's neurological, it's spiritual, and it's psychological. But I could go into the whole neurological thing. That's another lecture for another day. But in anxiety, it's sort of an inflammation, like an irritation of our emotion and energy, sort of from external stressor. So basically, do you need to get out?
Would you mind turning the AC down to like 69 or 68?
Yeah.
I'm like sweating the makeup off as I'm putting it on. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Can I see if I can pause this? Hey, I'm back. So thank you for your patience with the little interruption there. Okay, so we also look at ancestral work. So this is obviously a very pagan practice to work with and honor and sort of take guidance from our ancestors, and this is very important in our mental health. We hear about ancestral trauma and the cycles of trauma that are very important to work with our mental health. Another thing is self-love and self-esteem. I always like to say love spells are not just for your crush. Use them for yourself. And it's true. It sounds silly, but it's very, very true. Structure and routine. Okay, this one's really good because, we talk about, and I think a lot of people know exactly what I'm talking about here, with sort of keeping our ritual space clean, keeping things swept up. This is super important for our mental health as well as our spiritual health, because it literally, creates clarity of mind. It sweeps up the gunk and gets rid of it in a way that is needed. Structure and routine. We talk about the pagan structure of the seasons and of the cycle of the sun and moon. So this is structure and routine in a practice that is chaotic and joyful as well. Actually has quite a bit of routine in it. And I'm talking daily as well, daily meditation, daily grounding exercises, daily movement related to your practice. Your pagan practice is very, very good for our mental health, giving us a sense of structure, stability, predictability, especially right now during COVID. We are filming this during COVID-19. It's vital having structure and routine for our mental health. So this one's really important, is intention and manifestation. So we talk about just spell work and ritual work in general. We look at what is the most important thing in a ritual or spell. Our intention. Setting the intention. What are we trying to do here? What is the goal? What is the end result that we want, so that we can put our energy, build the energy, put it into that, right? And that is exactly, what we do for our mental health as well, or what can work for us as well. And if we have a goal, like we have a job interview, we have, a date we're really excited for, we have, number one, what do we need to work on with that? Do we need to work on our self-confidence? Do we need to work on our interview skills? Do we need to brush up on some knowledge? And can we sort of channel that in the intent, like in the whatever ritual or spell work we're doing? Or can we do rituals just for our mental health? Can we do one for joy and happiness or peace or letting go of that like bad relationship or moving on or grieving? Can we do ritual work for that, for our mental health? It really is true that just having an intention for something really on its own, however we are expressing that, is powerful, right? Okay, so what does this look like practically? How can we practically bring this into our practice? Okay, so we already talked a little bit about protection amulets. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, expensive, doesn't have to be anything with any huge, deep meaning, but go wild, do what you want to do. Make it as personal as you want, but what really matters, again, is the intention here, right? Ideally, something you can wear every day, or at least when you need it. So is it, do you have a job with coworkers that are really stressful, you need to wear it to work, to again kind of energetically protect yourself from this negativity, a toxic work environment. Okay, so excuse me. Blessing our home and our space, especially if it's somewhere that we don't feel safe in, that we're just settling into, that we want to feel more comfortable in, that we can't rest in. If we're having insomnia, sage the room, or not just sage, but cleanse the room. If we are, if there's something with a space, clean it. Put salt down.
I remember when you recommended that I use certain crystals to sleep with because of all my nightmares and the negative energy.
Yeah, and
it helped.
Yeah, so Gabby's telling me about how she put crystals under her pillow to help her with nightmares, and I had told her this years and years ago, and that's actually a good example that applies to other stuff. We're having kind of what I call safety objects, or is something that having around can help you feel more comfortable, confident, or safe. And it's really funny because I like to use this example in that little kids have their teddy bears, or some people like to carry.
That's so true.
Yeah, or we see people also use this in other ways, like carrying guns, and that's a whole other topic, which this isn't here to discuss. But yeah, so having crystals under your pillow at night to help with nightmares. I mean, yeah, if it works, it works. Something that you can find comfort and calm and peace in. And that also applies to poppets, creating poppets or any other, ritual or sacred item in your place of work. If you're in your car for safety, having something that we, can hold physically is really powerful. Okay, and actually I'm along the same line of poppets is creating things like crafts, cooking, baking, something to put our energy into, like to physically manifest that way. And we can also look at this with movement. I didn't go over movement the last couple times I gave this presentation, so it's really important to me that I go over that more now, and the importance of again, where are we putting this energy? Where are we putting this this anger or sadness or stress or fear? Put it into movement. Getting really tired and exhausted is a great way to manage our movement and connect physically, and connecting, grounding to the earth. What's more pagan than being in nature, right? So yeah, I was talking about crafting. Again, going back to intentions, is the idea that what better way to manifest something and create an intention than by physically making something with our hands, right? Crafting, cooking, especially when we are creating this item or this food, if we can have the intention in mind while we're creating it. And this could be, anything that I've talked about now, if we can make it, it makes it all the more powerful and special, right? Because we've poured our time and energy, heart and soul into it, whether it be a poppet or a protection amulet or some kind of comfort object.
People will notice the energy you put into things too.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, this one I think is probably the most important. I find it the most important. I think a lot of people do too, is cleansing and purification rituals. Okay. So this is especially for our empaths, for our people that are really, really affected by energy, people with really bad, profound depression, with really profound anxiety. If you're noticing that you're entering a big slump, if you're trying to kind of avoid entering a depressive episode, if you notice you're kind of slipping into mania, if you're having a lot of panic attacks, do a cleansing ritual, do a protection ritual. I like to do bathing rituals. I personally like to make bath teas, so I will use some eucalyptus, some rose, some nettle, some catnip, a little bit of chamomile, some lavender, make a bath tea. You can make it as wild as you want to. You can incorporate candles, you can incorporate crystals, you can incorporate deities. But ultimately what matters is the idea and the intention and manifestation of getting rid of all that gunk, all that anxiety, all that stress, getting rid of it, letting it flow down the drain. Incorporate Elements, right, into this. Give it back to the elements, and then protection, same thing. You can do a protection ritual, it's a bath ritual, or however cleansing and purification looks like to you. I like to do them with the full moon and the new moon. Obviously, new moon would be cleansing and full moon would be protection. In that way, it adds to our routine, our self-care spiritual routine or structure. Again, working with elements and astrology. Full moon baths, calling on the earth for grounding, calling on fire for passion or energy or help with sexuality, calling on water for comfort, to help get in touch with our emotion, or release blockages emotionally. Calling on air for communication, for creativity, for learning to speak, our what we need to say, get it out there, to set boundaries, right? And then whatever deities you like to work with, whoever it is you like, or whatever it is you like to work with or pray to, if you have a deity or if you have something that you specifically like to communicate with or someone, working with them is a massive source of comfort, guidance, security, support, love. Use that with your mental health. Pray to them, ask them, appeal to them for help with anxiety or depression. Consulting, now this one I would be cautious with. Consulting a deity or tarot for guidance and reassurance. This is good, but I would also be careful to not overly rely on tarot or any type of divinatory tool, specifically to make a choice, because especially if we're suffering with anxiety, we can become overly reliant on it. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was just gonna interject with why, if you were gonna explain that.
No,
because I was I totally do divination all the time. I do kind of get a little reliant.
It can cause more anxiety. It can cause us to become more confused. If we have trouble decision making, especially if we have a history of being gaslit or of being, or of trauma or of maybe not making the best choices or of not trusting ourselves, I would really caution the use of tarot and divinatory tools for making choices for ourselves. Or even with a deity. I know that might be, kind of controversial to say, but ultimately what works for you, but just to be mindful of that, to be aware of that. And actually, that being said, to be mindful about it, so other than intentional work and manifestation work, or that kind of being the core of what we're talking about here, one of the other main core things I would say is personalize. What works for you, and that's what matters, as long as it's not hurting anyone. And by that I mean rituals, self-care, whatever's helping you, right? So if you don't have to necessarily find some ancient recipe in some ancient textbook somewhere. If something simple from the dollar store works for you today, that's what matters. There's no difference at all if it works for you. Same with ritual work. If you read in a book that onyx means protection, but you find, this other crystal is protection for you, that's what matters. That's what you should do. We talked about boundaries. We talked about self-love. Cooking, gardening, dancing, singing, art, writing, movement. So important. We're talking about expression here. We're talking about physicality. We're talking about endorphins. We're talking about, connection and community. That's a whole other thing, is community. Pagans are great at community. And that's so important for our mental health, to feel we have support and are cared for, have resources, have, so yeah, all of these things I just said, cooking, gardening, dancing, movement, help us to process our emotion. It's probably the main thing here. Expressing our emotion, getting it out speaking it, screaming it, very visceral. We have to feel in order to heal. We can't just ignore our emotion. We can't just ignore our pain. And we also can't dwell in it. We have to process it and allow it to move through us. And that can be really great through expression, right? Creativity, movement, rituals for letting go, I think, are massive. Okay. What do we have now? Okay. I do want to say this before I run out of time. I do want to make sure I cover this, so I'm going to jump kind of towards the end first for a minute, in saying that, having a spiritual practice for your self-care is fantastic, and we all should. And it is not always a substitute for mental health treatment. If we are at a place where we are not able to manage our mental health, where we are, not able to function as we would like to, if we're not able to, do our work or take care of ourselves or go to school or the things that we would like to do in our daily life to take care of ourselves, and we're doing all this self-care, we're staying on top of our spiritual self-care, or if we're not able to do it, it's time to seek some professional help. Finding a counselor, finding a therapist.
That doesn't mean that you have less faith or anything.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Gabby. It doesn't mean you have less faith. If you appeal to whatever deities or whatever, elements, this is what you need. I would recommend going on psychologytoday.com. It's just a website. It's kind of almost like a Facebook for therapists, except not. You can just search through hundreds of profiles locally. Type in your city, your state, your zip code, whatever, and they'll have all these therapists locally that are licensed. They are all licensed. That's probably one of my favorite things about it, is that they're going to be legit, because you have to be licensed to be verified on the website. You have to provide all of your provider information. And you can search on there by specialty, they do have a religion section. They do not have paganism, I believe. I haven't checked in a while, to be fair, but they do have an other, you can check, or you can say you don't want whatever faith. I would not worry about faith as much, though. To be fair, I have heard people have had some issues with counselors of different faiths. I do not see that very often. I guess my point is that I would not let a counselor's faith deter you. For instance, I worked at Catholic Charities for a year, and they were some of the best counselors I ever knew. And, a lot of them were Catholic, but that never came up in session. They never pushed it on anyone. It was never even a topic in session. So my point is, don't let that freak you out too much if that's something you're worried about. Psychology Today is great. You can search by insurance, by private pay, by sliding scale, by topic, if you're looking for trauma or whatever you're looking for. I would recommend that. As of the time this video is being filmed, I'm not able to take more clients. I am full right now, but I will leave my information, and if it's something that you guys would like to reach out to me in the future, please feel free to do that, and we can see where we're at then. What else are we looking at? Kind of on the same note, and I'll just briefly touch on this, is that I think that we also need to confront ourselves and be aware if we are using our spirituality or our spiritual self-care as an excuse to avoid treatment, right? Or as a crutch, right? I'm doing all these things, it's fine, I don't need treatment because I'm doing this or I'm doing that. I don't see that very often, but just, again, things to be mindful of, things to really honestly ask yourself, right? Let me see what else I definitely wanted to get into for today. I think that probably one of the biggest benefits of paganism for our mental health is simply the act of empowerment, is knowing that we are people that in whatever way embrace that we have power. I mean, you have to acknowledge that to be pagan in some extent, whether or not you are using it or you feel like it's however you value it. Every act that we do in paganism is a conscious choice, or on some level it is a conscious choice. And that act, by that I mean spell work, by attending ritual, by talking to pagans. These are choices that we are making. We're making choices of, I'm going to speak to this deity now. I'm going to make this poppet now. I'm going to do my ritual bath now. And simply by that alone, by making a choice, is power, right? And I think that the ability to say something, do something, take some action, even if it's internal and not visible at all, it's really powerful. And that on its own is really great for our mental health. Knowing that we have the option to make a choice and take action, right? Is just very, very powerful. And we also look at the fact that, what do we look at in paganism too? We look at community. We look at celebrating positive sexuality. We look at encouraging joy, We look at community. We look at nature. All of these core tenets of paganism, these sort of traits that a lot of pagans share, are things that are vital to our mental health. They're vital to being a human being. They are our basic human needs. I really, really believe, especially as I've practiced, another year and a half since the last time I gave this presentation, that, in so many ways, paganism just naturally on its own addresses so much of our mental health, right? In a positive way. I'm not, again, saying that is sort of a catch-all, or that means that we are, kind of have all of our bases covered, though. Remember kind of what I was saying a minute ago, not to use it as an excuse or a crutch, right? People ask me a lot about medication, or what I think about things like ayahuasca, or about Prozac, or in general. And this kind of goes back to the same thing of, I guess what works for you works for you. I've never been particularly pro-med or anti-med. I view it kind of like labor, like giving birth, if that makes sense. I'll explain it in that I think that medication can, if we are experiencing symptoms that are so intense, right? Like if we are so depressed or so anxious that we cannot get out of bed, we can't function, we're not sleeping at all, we're not eating, we're getting sick, we may not be able to do our spiritual self-care. We may not be able to go to therapy, right? So sometimes in these cases, I think medication can help to alleviate, turn the volume down a little bit so that we can then do the work we need to do, right? To help ourselves feel better. Then we can bring in the spiritual self-care, right? Or sometimes we're so depressed, we're so anxious, it won't work because we're just not on a level where it will work. And by working, I mean psychologically, right? So, okay, I was using the birth metaphor. Yeah, so some people, though, like to feel it. And that's, I think ideally, yes, I think that we all should feel it. And realistically, is that something that we all can do? Not really. Not the way that our society is structured today, unfortunately. So some people, I've had a lot of people that have not gone on meds and have regretted it. I have people that have taken meds and regretted it. It's sort of like with, again, back to, I'm gonna tie this into labor, because I think that a lot of, women go into childbirth and they're like, I want to feel this, I want to feel this. And they do, and it's really painful, and they're really grateful they did that, right? And some women are like, you know, I'm not going to use meds. I'm going to want to feel this. I want to feel this. And then they realize they can't. They realize that it's causing them more harm, that they are being traumatized, that they are, you know, going to be really hurt physically, right? So then either they need to take an epidural or something, or they are harmed, you know, in ways that could have been avoided. And then the opposite spectrum is that some women are like, yeah, give me all the meds, give me all the epidural, and they feel nothing, and they're fine. They're happy with their choice. They, you know, they're okay with that. And then there's some women who are like, oh, give me all the epidural, and then they feel disconnected. They feel robotic. They have trouble bonding with their baby, and they really regret it. Now, that being said, whatever choices we make doesn't mean that we're, you know, we can't go back. So that's, you know, I'm not saying it's like over, but my point overall is that, you know, I would encourage you to be open-minded to what works for you. And I know, as, you know, pagans, a lot of us are very anti-medication. I get that. And, but just to remain open-minded, right? And to respect what other people choose to do, right? Okay, so I'm right at that 31-minute mark now. And if you guys have any questions, guess you can email me. I'll give my email to the organizers of Pagan Pride. And I'm really happy that I've been able to contribute this year. And I hope you guys have a great fall. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye, y'all.